Hey everyone, Isho here. In the last few videos, we've explored a wide range of hidden truths from the secret connections between Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and Buddhism to the lost teachings of Christ, his journey to India, the real story of Enoch and Thoth, a crash course in Buddhist enlightenment, the metaphysics of time and space, and even a full breakdown of the Mahdi and the religion he wrote in on. Today we're taking on another powerful symbol, the archetype known as Lucifer. Who was he really? A fallen angel, a bringer of light, a villain, a rebel, or a misunderstood myth? We're not here to glorify the figure, but to decode him. By comparing Lucifer with ancient figures across other religions and mythologies, we'll peel back the layers of symbolism to understand what he truly represents, and more importantly, how not to become that archetype on your own spiritual path. This is a deep dive into one of the most misunderstood forces in history. Let's get into it. The name Lucifer appears only once in the entire Bible, in Isaiah chapter 14 verse 12. It's a Latin translation of the Hebrew phrase Hallel ben Shachar, which means shining one or light bringer and son of the dawn. In its original context, this verse is not referring to the adversary or a fallen angel, but is actually a taunt directed at the king of Babylon, a mortal ruler whose pride and arrogance led him to proclaim he would ascend to the heavens, yet he was ultimately cast down. It's a poetic critique of tyranny and hubris, not a description of Satan. The term Hallel refers to the morning star, the planet Venus, and originally applied to a human king. The connection to a fallen angel came later, reinterpreted by Christian theology. In the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Hebrew Bible, Hallel is rendered as Hiosforos, meaning bringer of the dawn. In Latin, it becomes Lucifer, from lux, light, and fere, to carry. As it's famously translated, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?" Over time, the name Lucifer took on a much broader symbolic meaning and shares traits with many other mythic and religious figures from ancient traditions. Prometheus, the bringer of fire, Gnosis, punished eternally for defying the gods. Samael, Yaldabaoth, the blind demiurge who believes he is God. Ravana and the Asuras, powerful but prideful beings separated from the divine. Mara, the tempter who binds souls in illusion and keeps them from awakening. Enki, a figure of rebellion against Enlil associated with knowledge and defiance. Loki, the trickster god who through cleverness causes the downfall of gods. Samael, Lucifer, angel of severity, archangel of Mars, tied to temptation and death. Iblis, a jinn who refused to bow to Adam, cast out for pride. Set, the killer of Osiris, embodiment of ego and disorder. Ahriman, Angra spirit of destruction, illusion, and dualistic ego. The solar logos, a misunderstood archetype of divine intelligence. The light bearer, a fallen spark of divinity still seeking redemption. This archetype is not necessarily evil, but rather a symbol of misused enlightenment. Properly understood, Lucifer represents the divine spark within man that has fallen into ego, illusion, and control, and yet that same spark may be redeemed through awakening, humility, and a return to the source. In Gnosticism, the trapped light of Sophia is freed through gnosis. In Christianity, the prodigal son returns to the Father. In mysticism, the ego dies so the true self may awaken. Lucifer is not merely a devil, but the fallen genius in each of us, the egoic mind that exalts itself above God, the light of knowledge misused, the morning star that blinds rather than illuminates, the rebel who becomes a slave, the false light that must die for the true light to rise. To understand Lucifer is to understand the human condition, how we fell from unity into duality, from spirit into ego, and how that very fall holds the potential for conscious return to the divine. If Lucifer is the morning star that rises before the sun, then Hesperus is the evening star that follows after. Both are Venus, the planet of duality, one before the light, the other after. Lucifer becomes the light before the sun, ego thinking it is the source. Christ becomes the light of the sun, the realization of the true light. And so in Revelation chapter 22 verse 16, Christ says, I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright and morning star. This verse creates a polarity, Lucifer and Christ as two sides of the same archetype, one fallen, the other redeemed. If the morning star was purely evil, why would Christ ever refer to himself that way? It's remarkable that a single word, mentioned only once in the entire Bible and Torah, could come to carry such a weight of fear and condemnation. Even more so when we realize that Lucifer was never truly a name, but a title, a poetic symbol. Perhaps it says more about us than about the word itself. Humanity has always preferred to project darkness outward, to invent an external enemy rather than confront the shadow that lives within. When we examine the core traits associated with Lucifer and compare them with the names and archetypes of similar figures across the world's religions, we don't just see a demon, we see a mirror of mankind. Pride, ambition, desire for divinity, enlightenment, aspiration, self-awareness, individualism, creative power, rebellion, vanity, defiance, intelligence, altruism, trickery, suffering, liberation, sacrifice, wisdom, foresight, radiance, brilliance, hope, illusion, beauty, light, higher mind, power, knowledge, righteous struggle, self-mastery, chaos, violence, power struggle, rivalry, protection, necessary chaos, severity, temptation, judgment, divine justice, catalyst for growth, discipline, benefactor of humans, compassion, guidance, forbidden teachings, corruption, fall, empowerment, awakening, persuasion, devotion, love, political wisdom, diplomacy, intellect, logic, cynicism, honest deceit, wit, subversion, innovation, humor, transcendence, and ego. This is perhaps the oldest guilt trip in human history, an archetype designed to shame and belittle the divine spark in man. But when we peel away the fear, we begin to see the truth. You are that archetype. All of us are. Each soul that falls from heaven, from the divine, from the afterlife, and is born into this world of suffering and illusion, has in some form stepped into the Luciferian myth. We are not in hell because of Lucifer. We are the Lucifer, the unrealized light still seeking its way home. When you curse that name, you curse yourself, your ancestors, your children, your own spirit. The so-called negative traits of this archetype serve as a dark teacher, qualities to recognize and transcend. The positive traits are gifts, raw potential for creativity, wisdom, and self-mastery. Lucifer is the light that can be corrupted, the brilliance that can be deceived, but once awakened, once integrated, that light transforms. You are no longer the morning star in shadow, you are the sun itself, the risen light. That is Christ consciousness, and very few reach it in their life. Most remain bound in the morning star's fall, never rising into their full illumination. The Luciferian archetype is not merely rebellion, it's aspiration, the longing of the finite to reach the infinite. Spiritual aspiration, reaching towards divine truth. Creative rebellion, defying imposed dogma in favor of inner truth. Fall and redemption, descending into ego and matter, only to rise again through gnosis. The divine mirror, reflecting both our light and our pride, both our shadow and our divinity. To confront this archetype is to confront the essence of the human journey, the fall, the struggle, the awakening, and the return. The first appearance of the word Satan is in Numbers chapter 22:22. But God's anger was kindled because he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road as an adversary against him. Adversary, not a proper name, a role, a function, one who opposes. In Job chapter 1 verse 6 we read, "And the Satan also came among them." Here, the adversary is not evil incarnate, it's a heavenly being, part of the divine court, a prosecutor, a cosmic quality control agent, not a devil, not yet. Later, in the Greek, it becomes diabolos, the slanderer, the accuser. This is where we get the English word devil. It's not until Mark chapter 1:13 that Satanas emerges, finally treated as a personal being, a character, a force. So then we must ask a question, an uncomfortable, avoided question. Where does the adversary live? In 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 4, the New Living Translation says, Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. The King James Version calls him the god of this world with a lowercase g. A god? Why? Why would any sane theology refer to the adversary as the god of this world? Is he a deity? Not quite. Not even a full angel of the Most High, yet blamed for all evil, corruption, greed, and death. In Matthew 4 verses 1 through 11, we witness the temptation of Christ, one of the rare few in religious history to defeat the adversary directly. Others include Buddha, Zarathustra, Krishna, Arjuna, Odin, Hermes Trismegistus, and Moses. We've touched on this before in the last video, Christianity's occult origins, the secret Vishnu-Yahweh-Amun connection, but it's worth repeating for the truth must be truly understood. Imagine this. You are alone in the wilderness. You've been fasting, you're exhausted, disoriented, depressed, suicidal. Where do you meet the adversary? Artists and scriptures would have you believe it appears as a shadowy creature, a cloaked figure, or a monstrous presence. But if you understand ego, if you know the voice inside your head, you already know the truth. The adversary is not external. It may speak through others, but it lives within. It is a liar, a thief, a murderer. When you lie, you speak its native language. You are of your father, the devil, and you love to do the evil things he does. He was a murderer from the beginning. He always hated the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, it is consistent with his character, for he is a liar and the father of it. Until you recognize that this voice inside you is the adversary, you are bound by it, a slave, a puppet. This voice tempts you, inflates your ego, fuels your pride. It whispers, take more, greed, covet theirs, envy, eat, consume, distract, gluttony, rage, destroy, wrath, porn, exploit, lust, sleep, ignore, avoid, sloth, praise yourself, worship yourself, pride. It is not you, but it pretends to be. This makes you the archetype of Lucifer, still chained, still in illusion. Like Mara, the world demon of Buddhism, it acts through Maya, the illusion of the self. Only through Christ consciousness or Bodhisattva awareness can one silence this adversary. You must rise above the 7 temptations. You must confront the liar in your own mind, question it, disarm it, expose it. If you've never dialogued with your thoughts, only listen in monologue, then yes, the devil has you in chains. This is the blueprint, the sacred path, a universal teaching now forgotten, twisted into superstition. The corruption of mystic wisdom has externalized the adversary, projecting it as a boogeyman to distract you from your inner war. Because no one wants to be the devil, no one wants to be the monster, and so no one dares point the finger inward. We want to be pure, good, holy, so the ego dismisses this idea entirely. I'm not the villain, it says, I'm the hero. This is the grand deception. The finest trick of the devil is to convince you he does not exist, and so the voice in your head says, I'm not the devil, and that's that. You believe it. You're good, aren't you? So why question that? But here's the real challenge. If you want to rise, if you want to stop being a fallen angel and reclaim your divine self, ask yourself, what will my next thought be? Ask again, who am I? Put the spotlight where it belongs, on your own shortcomings, on the trickster within. You've followed this voice your whole life, but you are the witness to it, not the speaker. This is the first step. This is how Christ consciousness is born. by rising above the adversary through awareness. Freemasons believe that they are Lucifer, the so-called god of this world. But the question is, do they mean the risen Lucifer or the fallen? Given their secretive death rituals, their immoral sexual practices, one can assume they are fallen, strayed far from the path of Christ, far from the teachings of Buddha, the very figures whose wisdom inspired their alchemical traditions. What begins as a quest for enlightenment becomes in many ways a perverted mimicry of Judaism. They believe themselves to be chosen, to be aligned with the divine. But what they don't tell their room temperature degree brethren, the sheep masons who join in ignorance, is that the so-called Ein Sof Hour, the limitless light, that which sits atop the tree of life above Kether, is none other than Lucifer himself. They are one and the same. Or perhaps an alien deity much like Scientology and the Mormons. 16 years ago, a video surfaced online, a civil confrontation between a Shriner Mason and a Christian recording the exchange. Let's watch.
Lucifer, what is your problem?
Just that, sir.
Okay.
I'm a Christian, sir.
I'm pure and virtuous and wholesome and innocent. How can you say anything bad about me?
Sir, you need to be born again.
I am born again.
Now, did you just say that you are Lucifer?
I am Lucifer.
Okay, define Lucifer for me.
Pure, virtuous, wholesome, innocent individual that's out to help people.
Lucifer is?
Yeah.
Say that again. Lucifer is a pure, holy...
Virtuous.
Virtuous. Now, is he the Lucifer that God created?
That's the same one.
Oh, man, this is great. I'm going to put this on the internet.
The video begins with the Shriner Mason boldly declaring, "I am Lucifer." He goes on to define Lucifer as pure, virtuous, wholesome, and innocent. This moment starkly contrasts the Christian worldview where Lucifer is the embodiment of evil. To them, Lucifer is the adversary, the fallen angel, the devil. But for the Masons, Lucifer is something else, something opposite. They see him as a symbol of enlightenment, of ascension, the very essence of purity, virtue, and innocence. This belief comes from their hubris, this idea that they themselves are rising to God's level. Through their esoteric interpretation of Lucifer, they have transformed him into an archetype of divine elevation, not damnation. And in an ironic twist, that's exactly what Lucifer represents, the desire for self-deification, so perhaps they are Lucifers by definition. The absurdity deepens when we turn our attention to Satanism. While Satanism and Luciferianism share a foundation rooted in Gnostic teachings, their beliefs diverge, creating a nuanced distinction between the two. Both systems were deemed heretical by the Vatican Church over the past 2,000 years, which led to them survive only in secret societies, Masonry, the Golden Dawn, and Rosicrucianism, to name a few. Historically, there was a moral and legal system in place for the lower classes built around Christian doctrine. For the elite, kings, rulers, and even the papacy, another doctrine prevailed, a doctrine that celebrated liberty, esoteric wisdom, and a form of divine right. In Anton LaVey's atheistic version of Satanism, there is no God. Man is his own God. The devil is a metaphor for the ego, for natural instincts, for personal power. Human nature is seen as inherently selfish, animalistic, and free. The goal? Personal freedom, indulgence, and above all, self-worship. Ironically, they follow a moral code not unlike that of Christ, do unto others as they do unto you. It's merit-based, not grace-based, and like atheism, they deny any notion of an afterlife. For LaVeyans, Christianity represents a system of repression, a moral code that stifles true human nature. They embrace rational self-interest, vengeance over forgiveness, and pride over humility, a deliberate inversion of the Christian moral compass. In contrast, the theistic branches of Satanism, such as the Joy of Satan, JOS, and similar occult movements, view the devil as real and divine, not evil, but a liberator. In this worldview, Yahweh, the Christian God, is a tyrant, a liar, and an enslaver. The devil is often equated with figures like Enki, Lucifer, or even ancient Sumerian, Egyptian, or Gnostic deities. These Satanists believe humanity is capable of godhood, and Christianity suppresses our divinity. Their goal is spiritual ascension, the acquisition of knowledge, and personal deification. Their moral code emphasizes self-responsibility, liberation from dogma, and loyalty to the devil as a teacher. Reincarnation, astral planes, and the idea of becoming gods in the afterlife are central to their beliefs. Within JOS, there's a fusion of Nazi ideologies, ancient astronaut theory, and Sumerian paganism. They claim the devil is actually Enki, a benevolent creator god demonized by Christianity. Yahweh is seen as a false god, an alien or archon who enslaved humanity. Their practices focus on meditation, kundalini energy, psychic development, and anti-Christian narratives. These beliefs stand in stark contrast to Christian theology, which portrays Lucifer and the devil as the ultimate tempters and agents of evil. Satanists and Luciferians, however, reframe Lucifer as the true light-bringer, a Promethean figure who gave humanity knowledge. Yahweh, in their view, is a jealous and oppressive deity. In theistic Satanism and Luciferianism, credit is given to the devil for helping figures like Christ and Buddha reach higher spiritual insights. Without the temptation of the devil, without the adversary, these figures would never have attained the divine wisdom they shared. In Matthew 4, without the devil's challenge, there would be no Christ as we know him. Similarly, without Mara in Buddhism, Buddha would not have reached enlightenment. This belief extends to the story of Eden. Satanists argue that the serpent in the Garden of Eden, rather than being evil, played a crucial role in Adam and Eve's self-realization. Without the apple from the tree of knowledge, humanity would have remained in ignorance. The adversary, in their view, is necessary for human spiritual evolution. Thus, Satanists believe the devil is the true god of this world, a liberating force that leads humanity to higher consciousness. They can point to the 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 4 to justify this belief, claiming that the adversary is an angel of light, a necessary presence in humanity's path to self-knowledge. Modern Satanism, particularly through the influence of Aleister Crowley and Anton LaVey, emerged as a rebellious Enlightenment movement, a counter to the Vatican's strict Catholicism. They sought to reclaim what was lost, to prove that Christ's journey to India and Buddha's mystical teachings were suppressed by the Church to maintain control. Crowley famously coined the law of telema, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, love is the law, love under will. Ironically, this mirrors Christ's teachings, love does no harm to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of the law. But the phrase, do what thou wilt, is often misinterpreted by some as an endorsement of total self-empowerment, disregarding consequences. Without the moral compass provided by the Old Testament and Yahweh, this belief can be twisted into an excuse for unrestrained hedonism, or worse, satanic rituals. These ideas are in direct opposition to both Christianity and Buddhism, where the adversary is a force that leads people astray. In Buddhism, the Buddha dismisses the devil as an illusion. You are not real, you do not exist. The voice in the mind, the temptation, is not real. It is a projection of the ego. To believe it is real is a fallacy, perhaps wishful thinking. Carl Jung, the influential figure who helped shape modern clinical psychology, didn't view spiritual and religious symbols as literal depictions of external realities. Instead, he saw them as archetypes and symbols representing the internal psychological process of the human psyche. In Jungian terms, the ego represents the conscious self, the part of the psyche we identify with day to day, our personality, our roles, and our so-called conscious mind. The adversary, however, is seen as the shadow. It embodies the repressed and unacknowledged aspect of the self, the parts of our psyche that are typically hidden because they are socially unacceptable or considered unfavorable. Much like Lucifer, the shadow contains both positive and negative elements, hidden talents, repressed desires, and instinctual urges that we tend to suppress. When we ignore these aspects, they inevitably manifest in destructive ways. This is the adversary that sabotages a person's life, often through self-sabotage, projecting negative traits onto others or unconscious behaviors. From Jung's perspective, the devil could be understood as the personification of the shadow, the forces within us that we reject or fear. Yet, rather than being purely evil, the devil represents a crucial part of the psyche that needs to be acknowledged and integrated for wholeness to be achieved. Jung argued that the path to psychological health and individuation involves confronting and integrating the shadow. Thus, the devil and the adversary should not be seen as external forces, but as internal struggles we must face on the journey to becoming whole. For Jung, the devil is an archetype, a universal symbol that represents certain human experiences or psychological forces. The devil's rebellion, particularly in the Christian tradition, is symbolic of breaking free from the established order and asserting individual will. This aligns with the hero's journey, where an individual must step into the unknown and confront their shadow, those parts of themselves that are hidden or feared. The devil is linked to temptation and desire, urging individuals to explore their deepest impulses, lust, pride, anger, and more. Jung viewed these forces as essential components of the self. Rather than rejecting or denying them, we must understand, embrace, and integrate these impulses to become whole. Personally, I believe that nature itself and the animal kingdom in particular served as a profound inspiration for the ancient dichotomy between the divine and the devilish, the spiritual and non-spiritual. When early humans and philosophers observed the natural world, they noticed a sharp contrast between human consciousness and animal instinct. They probably came to the conclusion that animals lack the ability to think critically, act with selflessness, or exhibit deep moral awareness. In contrast, humans possess the capacity not only to understand such concepts, but also to articulate and reflect on them. In the wild, the strongest often dominate, the largest or most aggressive animal takes what it wants, while the weaker ones must accept what remains. This dynamic seemed to mirror a primitive, amoral structure, one in which raw instinct ruled over compassion or justice. Yet, even within this seemingly brutal system, ancient observers also saw elements of love and care. Certain species exhibited behaviors necessary for their survival that mirrored human tenderness. A newly hatched bird, for instance, depends entirely on its parents for food and protection. A lion cub cannot hunt or fend for itself, and so relies on the pride's collective effort, just as a human child is essentially helpless for the first decade of its life. Contrast this with creatures like sea turtles, which are cast into the world alone from birth. With no parental guidance, they must traverse perilous beaches and navigate the open ocean instinctively. Unlike mammals with rich social structures, these creatures survive without the nurturing culture passed down from parent to child. Ancient thinkers took note of these differences and began to associate animal behavior with instinctual, often selfish tendencies, but also with moments of vital compassion. These insights laid the groundwork for early spiritual frameworks. At the same time, humans are not simply animals. We build, sing, create art, speak languages, and ponder existence. We share many traits with animals, but express them in a more sophisticated, self-aware ways. In Zen Buddhism, animals are seen as already embodying the Zen nature. They are, in a sense, enlightened, not because they have transcended their instincts, but because they are free from the illusion of ego and temptation that haunts the human mind. They are what they are, nothing more, nothing less. They are not judged by God for their behavior because it is simply their nature. Yet they are still part of samsara, the circle of birth, suffering, death, and rebirth. Like us, they experience joy and pain. Unlike us, they lack the capacity to step outside of that cycle with conscious awareness. Humans, by contrast, can be aware of both our own nature and that of the animals, and because of this, we are judged more strictly. We bear responsibility. When viewed symbolically, the story of Noah offers another lens through which to understand this animalistic adversary. Rather than a literal account of a cataclysmic flood, the ark can be seen as the human vessel, body, and mind, through which we must guide our primal instincts. Allowing the animals into the ark two by two becomes a metaphor for acknowledging and restraining these instinctual parts of ourselves. The flood waters symbolizes the subconscious, the depths of our emotions and temptations, and the ark's survival through the storm represents the soul navigating life's trials while maintaining spiritual integrity. In this light, spirituality is not about denying that we are beasts. It is about knowing that we are beasts and choosing something greater. From an ant's perspective, we are terrifying giants capable of destroying their entire colonies with ease. We begin as monsters, but through conscious choice, we can transcend our animal nature. To be spiritual, divine, and pure is to choose the path of selflessness, of kindness, grace, and humility. It is to remain ever curious about what we do not yet know. It is to investigate our own ignorance, explore the nature of the world, and through that study, reach beyond the worldly and into the spiritual. In Vajrayana Buddhism, the tantric esoteric branch of the Dharma, there exist the concepts of thought forms, mental entities that arise with structure and identity, though they are not physical. Among these is the tulpa or nimrita, a kind of intentional imaginary friend. With practice, one can create, interact with, and even banish these forms. They are projections of the mind, and through discipline, one can train and control them. Now think back. Can you remember when you first became aware of your thoughts? Isn't it strange how simply by growing up in a society and learning language, we begin forming thought forms by default? Over time, the mind becomes a mirror of these habitual thought patterns. The inner voice you hear every day, what if that isn't you, but a tulpa you've unknowingly created? Because society is unfamiliar with tulpamancy, very few ever ask, is the stream of thoughts in my head just a self-created entity? Did I build this imaginary companion by accident, by simply thinking too much? Modern psychology doesn't even acknowledge this. It never dares say, the voice in your head might not be real, it might be your own unconscious invention. Instead, society encourages the presence of this voice. It's needed to maintain doubt, insecurity, and consumption. It's the voice that responds to advertising. It's the one that's never satisfied. Advertisements target the 7 deadly sins within that voice, your gluttony, pride, envy, sloth, lust, greed, and wrath, because that's how the system keeps the thought form alive. You don't want to be left out, do you? You want to feel like that cool guy driving the new car, or the girl smiling while biting into a glossy hamburger. These commercials appeal to the mimicking part of our brains. Monkey see, monkey do. When a commercial shows someone placing a piece of chewing gum in their mouth, what the industry calls the load, they spend thousands of dollars perfecting that one moment. A single smiling bite is engineered to make you crave the same experience. In reality, you're inserting a piece of synthetic chemical into your mouth, one that can calcify the pineal gland and numb your spiritual insight. It's hypnosis through habit. Food advertisements are just as dishonest. Food stylists construct perfect flying burgers with crisp lettuce and vibrant tomato slices, but the actual product you get is soggy, lukewarm trash. These burgers are nutritionally void, resembling cardboard more than food. The industry is tricking your instincts and overriding your natural caution with dopamine-laced imagery. Ask yourself, when was the last time a fast food burger looked like the picture on the menu? Fun fact, you can legally request the item to match the advertisement. If they fail, you're entitled to a refund or replacement. It's called false advertising, and it's more common than people think. This is how the adversary operates, through your ego, through your shadow, through the tulpa you've unknowingly nurtured. And instead of encouraging spiritual discipline and self-inquiry, society justifies the thought form's existence, even glorifies it. Emotional tantrums gets coddled instead of questioned. Instead of being told to grow up, to refine, or to rise, people are pampered into complacency. The result? Spoiled adults trapped in childlike minds, ruled by impulse, trained to consume, and that to corporations is the perfect consumer. But once you step away from mindless consumption and instant gratification, something shifts. You realize you are already complete, that cooking your own meals, knowing each ingredient, sensing the aroma, tasting the work of your own hands, is more rewarding than any fast food quick fix. That's when you start engaging with Ayurveda, the ancient science of mindful consumption. Even mobile apps exploit your impulses. Their interfaces are engineered for maximum dopamine hits, short content bursts, rapid swipes, instant reactions. Buttons are placed where your thumb naturally lands, optimizing for ease, not peas. Companies like Meta spend millions each year refining these mechanisms to keep you addicted. The result? A digital opiate. People scroll endlessly, numbed by overstimulation, left wondering why they feel so empty. Children especially fall into this loop, watching others play Minecraft, video after video, until their minds grow addicted to brain rot content. It's not an accident, it's by design. But when you become aware of the adversary in your mind, you begin the path of discipline. You make better choices. You practice patience. You realize that evil and selfishness aren't thrilling, they're boring. True coolness lies not in ego, but in unity, in the effort of a team over the boast of an individual. Eventually, you'll start cherishing silence, not as a void to escape, but as a state to embrace. You become the peace, you stop running, there is nowhere to run to. You are it, you are whole, you are aware, because at the heart of it, the word spiritual means mental. Consciousness resides in the mental plane. All spiritual mastery is ultimately mentalism. That's what hypnotists and stage magicians tap into, mentalism tricks, the control of thought and perception. And when you master your mind, you become sane in an insane world. So here are some vital questions that we must ask in order to discover the truth. Was the archetype of Lucifer ever truly evil, or was it the archetype of the common man, you and me? Could it have been a misunderstood symbol of enlightenment, rebellion, and the search for truth? Why did the church redefine the devil to also include Lucifer? If Lucifer originally meant light-bringer, why was the phrase personified and vilified? What were they trying to hide about humanity's search for illumination? Is the story of the fall not a punishment, but a metaphor for human consciousness becoming self-aware and separated from its divine origin? Is the story of the fall not a punishment, but a metaphor for human consciousness becoming self-aware and separated from its divine origin? Could the adversary we face not be a red demon with horns, but a subtle force within, the shadow, the ego, the animalistic mind? Do Luciferians and Satanists actually worship evil or themselves, or are they expressing something deeper about rebellion, individuation, or the rejection of religious dogma? If Jung was right and the shadow must be integrated rather than suppressed, what does that mean for how we deal with our own darkness? Could our inner devil be the part of us we've never dared to understand? Our fear, our hunger, our primal instincts, or even our subconsciousness? Are we truly fallen, or have we just forgotten who we are beneath the masks of ego, society, and self-made identity? Is being fallen simply a metaphor for being born into the physical, into hell on earth? Is the voice in your head truly your own, or is it a tulpa, a thought form, a programmed inner adversary shaped by language, habits, trauma, and culture? Why did ancient esoteric traditions teach about taming the beast, banishing thought forms, and mastering the mind, while modern systems feed and encourage our selfish impulses? Are we being shaped into obedient consumers and reactive beings by a system that profits from our unconscious patterns? If spiritual awakening is mental mastery, why is the modern mind so undisciplined, scattered, and addicted to dopamine fixes? What does it say about us that silence terrifies us more than chaos? And who benefits from a world where no one can sit still with their own soul? If the light bringer is within and the adversary is also within, then isn't the true battle not in heaven or hell, but in the battlefield of your own mind? Perhaps the greatest lie was not the fall of Lucifer, but the belief that he and the world around you were ever your enemies. If the adversary is a thought form, then who or what are you really? Side note, I do not endorse Luciferianism or Satanism, nor do I condone the ritual practices of such groups. Many of these rites can be just as barbaric and medieval as the darkest expressions of other religions. These topics were brought up solely for educational purposes and to contrast their views of the adversary with those found in mainstream Christianity. The voice in your head is not to be worshipped, it is to be understood. Only when the adversary within has been made silent and obedient can you gain mastery over your vessel and soul, allowing the divine to emerge from that silence. The voice of the adversary, it isn't even real. Do not take it seriously and do not believe the lies it spews. Truth can often be stranger than any fiction. The questions we've explored and the wonder they stir are just threads in a much larger infinite tapestry. Take what resonates with you, explore the unknown, and never stop questioning the answers you've been given. Subscribe if you wish to journey further down the spiral into the forgotten, the forbidden, and the transformative. Together, we can seek wisdom that reaches beyond the perceived boundaries of belief.